All right, so I got another clip here of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is giving us yet another example of how the Republican Party is currently defining themselves as a straight-up death cult. And she's going to get into some of the current problems with our ICUs across the country being filled up with unvaccinated people. And she's going to explain to you guys how that's actually not really that big of a deal because, people die all the time. And, who knows? You could get in a car accident. You could have a heart attack. Nothing's that big of a deal because we're all going to die one day. So I'm going to let her take over from here. And then we're going to explain how this is fitting into the broader picture of the Republican Party right now. So let's go ahead and hear what she's got to say.
So this is concerning to me, and that's why I'm saying there's more research needed by the FDA before the FDA approves these vaccines. Because here's the problem, Anna. Once the vaccines are approved by the FDA, we are going to see the mandates for vaccines ramp up far more than they are right now. They're going to be mandated, and I fear they'll become law in some cities and some states. Biden would love to make it the law of the land, and I think that's completely wrong. Again, I'm not anti-vax. I am completely for people being allowed to make choices, medical choices for themselves and their families. And I don't think the FDA should approve a vaccine that it doesn't seem to be that effective, especially with COVID-19 raging all over the country. At least that's what the media tells us every single day. But I've talked.
Okay, pause. So I'm not spreading anti-vax propaganda. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Don't worry about that. But let me tell you how the vaccines don't work. What? So you're not an anti-vaxxer. You're just going to sit up there and spread complete misinformation and lies about the vaccines in order to try to pressure people not to get them. So that's literally the definition of being an anti-vaxxer, right? So she is an anti-vaxxer, and she is coming out here and spreading propaganda and misinformation. She was just banned off of Twitter for spreading misinformation about the vaccines, okay? This was like a couple of days ago. She was suspended from Twitter. And she's turning around here and trying to present this as if there's some sort of a lack of data, as if Marjorie Taylor Greene is waiting for the scientific studies and she's going to read really closely through them and analyze them with her big brain scientific mind, and then she'll be okay with it after the fact. She has absolutely no goddamn idea what she's talking about, okay? The vaccines are extremely effective at preventing hospitalizations. They're good at preventing cases in general. There's less transmission, but the most important thing is they are almost 100% effective at preventing hospitalizations and deaths. That's what she doesn't bring up. You can say, oh, COVID is spreading all around the country. Well, guess what? The biggest hotspots right now for COVID are in the South, are in a lot of these states like Texas and Florida and Louisiana and Arkansas and Mississippi, that are all Republican-held states that all have very low vaccination rates. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, as people have been saying. That's accurate. It is largely unvaccinated people that are currently occupying those ICU beds. In fact, it's not only like a majority, it's almost all of them. In all of these different states, it's upwards of 99 point whatever percentage, depending on which state you're talking about, of people who are unvaccinated in the hospitals, okay? So she's completely lying and spreading misinformation here on whatever this station is, Real America's Voice, the show. She's spreading misinformation while she's talking about how she's not supposedly anti-vax and she's just waiting for the scientific data. So let's continue to hear what else she has to say about this.
The local hospitals here in my district and here in my state, yes, the waiting rooms get full, but guess what? The waiting rooms are full of all kinds of things, not just COVID, some, car accidents, trauma, other illnesses, cancer, and so forth. But they're seeing about 30% of those numbers being COVID cases. So while the news tries to tell us the hospitals are slam-packed with COVID, that's just not the case. Everyone needs to get back down to common sense and remember that, we're human. We can't live forever. We are going to catch all kinds of diseases and illnesses and other viruses, and we get hurt sometimes. So I'm all for let's be rational with this. Let's be careful. Let's be cautious, and let's not turn into an authoritarian regime that forces shots in arms of people that don't want it.
Okay, listen. So there are arguments to be made on both sides of the vaccine mandates, okay? I'll leave it to you guys to do your own judgment. I'm sort of wavering back and forth on whether or not I would support them and what would be the nuances of enforcing a vaccine mandate, etc. So there's a good nuanced discussion to be had on that specific front. And that is not a conversation that Marjorie Taylor Greene actually wants to have any nuance on. She just wants to fearmonger. But listen to what she just said. the difference, okay, conservatives still somehow, even this far into the pandemic, somehow still don't understand that there's a difference between a pandemic, something, a disease, a virus that is transmissible and able to spread from person to person and exponentially spread among a population that then goes and takes up ICU beds, versus a car accident that is in fact not contagious. Okay, they still don't understand the difference between a contagious infectious disease and accidents that happen. Okay, the ICUs, the problem with the ICUs filling up is not that it's some car accidents are rampantly spreading across the United States and a disproportionate amount of people, suddenly all of the ICU beds are taken up by car accidents. No, the problem is we have a disproportionate amount of ICU patients that are unvaccinated COVID patients. Okay, that is the actual problem. When you let COVID spread amongst a largely unvaccinated population in a lot of these conservative states, then your ICU beds are going to be taken up, so that then a lot of these car accident victims or stroke patients or heart attack patients or cancer patients are then not able to get the treatments that they actually need. So that's one of the main arguments that I've seen in favor of actually supporting a vaccine mandate that I could kind of get behind. Because listen, one thing that I don't think is acceptable is for a bunch of anti-vax people or a bunch of unvaccinated Americans, and granted, there are some people who can't get the vaccine, and that's its own thing, and they deserve care and nuance in that discussion. But for people who are just choosing not to get vaccinated, it's completely unacceptable to me that we would have a situation where a large, by choice, unvaccinated population, every time there's a surge in COVID or a new variant that comes out, they're just going to be filling up the ICU beds that nobody else can then use. Okay, that's a completely unacceptable situation, at least in my eyes. And even here in my home state of Georgia, many of my local hospitals are currently filled up with unvaccinated COVID patients. So if me or one of my family members needed to go to the hospital for some freak accident that happened, there's a chance we could be turned away or redirected to a faraway hospital that we might not make it in time because unvaccinated people are taking up these ICU beds. So it's completely ridiculous. And understand, in the broader scope of this, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not just one crazy standalone actor who is, in her own little bubble and world, but she is representing the view that she was just putting forward there has been the standard view amongst the entire Republican Party. This is what we're seeing with Ron DeSantis down in Florida and Greg Abbott over in Texas. All over the southern United States and in all of these conservative states, they are following basically the same general principle that she is, which is let's just let it spread. Who cares if people are filling up our ICU beds? It is what it is. We're not going to lock down. We're not going to enforce mask mandates. Not only are we not going to enforce mask mandates, we're going to ban mask mandates. Not only are we going to ban mask mandates, but we're going to go out there and spread doubt and fearmonger about the vaccines. So it's completely ridiculous. But understand, this is not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't like generally making a bunch of these videos with the craziest far-off conservatives. But the reason I brought you this video is because this is a representative of the Republican Party's position in their handling of COVID right now.